All right, happy Friday, my friends. Thanks for being here. This is another episode of Extreme Health Radio. Do you know that this is episode 699 of Extreme Health Radio? We've been doing this show since August, I believe, of 2012. And my friend Ty Bollinger was the first guest on that show way back then. But it's an honor to be here with you guys. I hope you enjoy the shows. And today we have Morley Robbins, and this is going to be one of the most, I think, informative shows that you may have ever heard. And we're going to talk about the show title is Iron Toxicity is the Real Pandemic. And we're going to talk about, I have a little quote from him from an email he sent me. We're going to talk, he said, we're going to go from Cain and Abel in the Bible to Fauci, ivermectin in the modern era. It should be fun and certainly educational. So this will be really good. So if you're new to Morley's work, this is going to be a really foundational show. It's going to be really interesting and I think thought-provoking. We're going to talk about a lot of myths that you may realize about health concerning iron and minerals and magnesium and copper and these types of things and how they run your system. So I'll introduce him in just a second. If you want to grab the show notes for today's show, everything will be available at extremehealthradio.com/699. So all you got to remember is 699 at the end of our URL, and we'll put the show links. We'll put links to Morley's got an awesome membership academy. He's got an awesome program he's got going. If you want to learn more about his work, I mean, he's doing some really great things. So we'll link up his website in our show notes as well, and you can check that out. His website's rcp123.org. And before we get started, let me just take a look at some of our upcoming shows. Got a lot of cool people coming up. Who do we got? Who do we have? Dr. Fisher coming up next Friday. That'll be really fun. He's a chiropractor, a local guy here, and he is the inventor of the Fisher traction device, which is what I've been using for my back. It's been helping tremendously. Dr. Michelle Lamassa Schrader will discuss recall healing. We have Matt Blackburn after that, June 18th, and then Jim Stevenson. We're going to have round 2 with him on vitamin D. So lots of cool people coming up. So make sure to subscribe to our shows. New shows come out every Sunday evening. And then the other 6 days of the week we release our best of episodes. So you get shows 7 days a week if you subscribe. And we greatly would appreciate if you subscribe and leave us a review and all that good stuff. That helps us be found by more people because there's a lot of people in the alternative health world, and most of them are talking about the same thing, and most of it is dangerous. And Morley is quite the contrarian, much like Adam Bergstrom. And this is why we like featuring guys like Adam and Morley on our show, because they're talking about things that actually move the needle. And they're not just, basic things that don't really do much and that could be potentially harmful. So this is why I like featuring guys like Morley. And if you're unfamiliar with his work, he has a BA in biology from Denison University of Ohio, holds an MBA from George Washington University in healthcare administration. He's the developer of the root cause protocol. He was known as the magnesium man. But now he's known as the Iron Man. But anyway, he talks about magnesium, iron, copper, and calcium, and how these are the main minerals that run the entire body. So let me turn his audio up for you. Morley, can you hear me, I hope?
Yeah, I'm here.
Great to have you. This is what you like to say, seance number 11.
Absolutely. I can't believe it. I was just noting that I seem to be populated throughout your 600 series. First one was 619, and today is 699.
Yeah, I know. Well, we became aware of your work, and once we become aware of something that I think really moves the needle, we got to explore the research that you're doing because, frankly, in the natural health world, there's too many people, I think, focused on the wrong thing. And you see this too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think it's true in a lot of different fields, but
Mm-hmm.
the, the there's a great tendency to treat symptoms and not treat the originating root cause of the problem. So, people will, they'll take a pill for a headache, but not try to figure out, well, what's driving the histamine response that's causing the changes in my physiology to cause the pain in my head.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a very different approach. And I just for some reason, just decided to dig deep and get to the root of the matter. And it's been a fascinating journey for the last decade.
Hmm. You have a really great show with our mutual friend Matt Blackburn on his Mito Life Radio called, I think it was the first one you did with him, called Minerals Run the Show. And you've done
Yeah,
similar talks with us as well on that same subject. And, it's so foundational, isn't it? That people just sort of miss these things. They think that minerals are just like a small part, but they don't realize how much of an impact minerals play on your health. And if you don't have the right ones, your body's going to be affected.
yeah. I think the subtle issue that people need to be careful of is that there are about, I think there's in total like 94 minerals on the planet. Uh, what you typically find in seawater is about 82. But there's a hierarchy. And a lot of practitioners or a lot of people who, like wellness coaches, will talk about, oh, we need all 84 minerals. And I think at some level they're right. But let's call a spade a spade. We gotta get to the minerals that make the biggest impact. And
Hmm.
when push comes to shove, we've got to make energy. That we live on a planet that has oxygen. Oxygen is actually a poison. We can't live without it, but it also we can't age without it.
Hmm.
So we've got to be able to do something with that oxygen. And by the grace of copper and magnesium, we're able to turn that into energy. And and what copper does is make sure that it doesn't become a further um, accident, if you will,
Hmm.
and it manages the oxygen molecule in our body in very precise ways. But people don't seem to understand the breadth and depth of what copper does. So it's at the end of the day, we live in a very we live in a beautiful planet, but it's also very hostile. And we've
Hmm.
got to be mindful that there are only a few minerals, especially magnesium and copper, that are essential to make energy. And then there's this pesky little mineral called iron. It's like throwing a wrench in a moving flywheel. It's like people don't realize how disruptive iron can be if it's not being regulated properly. And what I find fascinating, absolutely fascinating, is that there's only one element that manages both oxygen and iron, and it's called copper. And it's like, call me crazy. I think that ought to be taught in two places of higher learning: kindergarten and medical school.
Hmm.
It's that basic, but there's a lot of mystery around it. And I think the one word that's not used in doctor school, and I know this from talking to a lot of doctors, they've never heard the word copper in their training. It just doesn't even exist as part of their um, vocabulary that they had to memorize.
So we titled this interview "Iron Toxicity is the Real Pandemic," and you mentioned that we're going to go from Cain and Abel in the Bible to Fauci and faux Fauci in ivermectin. So let's start with what you said there. Like where where do Cain and Abel come into this?
What's actually really fascinating, this just has come to light in the last, actually about probably the last 2 weeks.
Uh huh.
Um, and I grew up in a home where at least we had the Bible. I'm not sure that I was the most practicing Christian, but at some point I actually read the Bible just to say that I'd read it. And it's an amazing story if anyone's ever read it. It's a lot of doom and gloom, but there's also a protagonist. But
Mm-hmm.
but the opening scene, or very after you get past Genesis, the opening chapters are about the struggle between two brothers, Cain and Abel. Well, it turns out that Cain was a grain farmer. Abel was a shepherd.
Mm-hmm.
And right there, we have an interesting clue about what the mineral composition might be between the two, grain and lamb. And so you find a lot of iron in grain, believe it or not, and you find a lot of copper and retinol in lamb. And so if
Interesting.
anyone's listened to my work in the past, they know that I'm fixated on the importance of real vitamin A. which I call
Mm-hmm.
it's called retinol, but that's what enables copper to do its job in the body. It retinol makes copper bioavailable. Retinol is what loads copper into its principal protein called ceruloplasmin.
Mm-hmm.
So basically what you've got is you've got a Cain versus Abel. Well, Cain is iron. Abel is copper. And what happens in the Bible? Cain kills Abel.
Oh.
It's one of the pivotal events, of course, in that story. So does that happen in our body? Absolutely does. That we are actually born with this big bolus of copper that we get from our mom, and there's a huge
If she
download
has it, right?
if she has it,
If she has it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's true for all mammals, not just us humans, but all mammals on the planet are supposed to get this download of copper from
Mm-hmm.
mom. And it's well chronicled in animal husbandry, and it's not taught in doctor school, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But but the thing is, we've got to start out with a bunch of copper because as we age, we're going to accumulate iron every day we're on the planet. The iron biologists agree on one fact. We accumulate 1 milligram of iron every day we're on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the level of iron in your body is 50% of the amount of iron in my body because you're about half my age.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't know that. So I've got about 25,000 milligrams of iron in a 68-year-old body. I'm supposed to have 5,000. And so that extra iron is what accelerates the aging process. But what's also happening is copper copper needs to be replaced every day we're on the planet through our diet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very hard to replace copper in an environment that is riddled with GMO seed, very intense fertilizers that block copper uptake, high fructose corn syrup, which kills copper absorption in the body, and antibiotics that are methodically designed to destroy copper status in the body.
What other
Now,
substances destroy copper for people that want to know that?
well, the COVID cocktail that people have been taking of late, vitamin D, very effective at blocking retinol, so then you can't have bioavailable copper.
Mm-hmm.
Zinc will block copper absorption.
Mm-hmm.
Ascorbic acid, I've got 15 articles that prove that ascorbic acid kills the structure of ceruloplasmin and blows up that protein so that copper leaks out.
Mm-hmm.
We can talk about, again, high fructose corn syrup, alcohol in general.
Uh-huh.
There are many factors in our environment that are very abrasive and destructive to copper status.
Does
But
silver do it
but
too?
yeah, silver is a complicated element because there's there seems to be some debate, certainly at the macro level. When you look at a periodic table and you can see that you have copper and then silver and gold.
Mm-hmm.
Well, silver has the property of kicking out copper because of its placement in the periodic table. Now, there seems to be evidence that the nano form does not have that property, but colloidal absolutely has that property. And it becomes
Really?
a great source of controversy in the alternative healing world because they love to use silver as opposed to an antibiotic.
Right.
And the irony of all ironies is what was the earliest recorded use of copper in a for medicinal purposes? It was 5000 BC. They knew that it had antimicrobial properties 7,000 years ago. And today, we're scratching our head trying to figure out, well, why do we have this copper thing on the planet? Well, let's just use silver and antibiotics and stuff. It's like the rich legacy of using copper by different civilizations for 7,000 years has been completely lost.
Mm-hmm.
The first recorded use of copper was 8,700 BC. That's the recorded use. It may go back before that. So it's, again, the element's been on the planet a long time. It goes back way back in time. But what people don't understand is its central role on a planet with oxygen. You and I would not be here. We would not be talking through these sophisticated computers, because you got to have a lot of energy to create something that runs like a computer. And what is it that runs our immune system? It's called energy. The immune
So,
system is actually called the immunometabolism. It's got to be able to generate a lot of energy in order to think and respond to the threat. Yeah, go ahead.
no, I'm just so curious. So, all of these things reduce. I want to look into the more of that nano silver that you mentioned, and I wonder if it's if it's efficacious to use it topically or something on a wound. But so you mentioned here Cain and Abel in the Bible to faux Fauci and ivermectin. Is ivermectin another substance that depletes copper levels, or at least prevents ceruloplasmin
Well,
from being loaded?
let's move forward. So we've got this iron versus copper. Well, what's a very powerful hormone that affects iron status is called estrogen. So that when the body doesn't have ceruloplasmin as the
Mm-hmm.
master antioxidant, plan B is to use estrogen. Who's the opposing force to estrogen? It's called progesterone.
Mm-hmm.
Progesterone has a very deep connection to copper. You cannot make progesterone without copper. You cannot secrete progesterone without copper. It's an incredibly important element for the role that progesterone plays in our body. So then we've got another very powerful series of chemicals. One that a lot of people may have heard of, like ACE2, angiotensin
Mm-hmm.
converting enzymes. Well, angiotensin is a very powerful hormone in our body, creates a lot of chaos. Angiotensin has a relationship with iron. Angiotensin's, the yin yang to angiotensin is adiponectin. Adiponectin is a very powerful hormone connected to copper. Again, these opposing forces in the body are very prevalent. And then some terms that people may or may not have heard of, but there is a very powerful metabolic pathway called mTOR,
Mm-hmm.
little m as in Mike, TORC, and its opposing partner is called AMPK. And if we had the time, if we had about 10 hours, I could tell you everything about that I know about mTOR and AMPK, but I'm very indebted to our buddy Robert Scott Bell, who said,
Uh-huh.
"Morley, isn't there a Latin phrase about caveat emptor?"
Yep.
And I said, "Very, very good, Robert. That's good." But
Sounds like.
but sounds like so. mTOR is activated by iron. What does
Interesting.
mTOR do? mTOR shuts down AMPK. And what people don't realize is AMPK is the Intel chip in every mitochondria in our body. And we have 40 quadrillion mitochondria. And there's AMPK in our hypothalamus, which is the master regulating tissue of the brain.
Right.
And what rules this planet is the phrase missing information equals missing truth. And because you don't know about AMPK, you don't worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
I know about AMPK, and I do worry about it, because your title for the show about iron toxicity is, it's very true, but the true pandemic on planet Earth today has nothing to do with what came out of the Wuhan lab in China.
Mm-hmm.
It's something called metabolic syndrome. People may have heard of it. People have certainly heard of hypertension or high blood pressure. People have heard of high cholesterol or hypercholesterolemia, or they've heard of high glucose or hyperglycemia. And people certainly have heard of cardiovascular disease. It's the number one cause of death worldwide. Still
Mm-hmm.
has been probably since the 1920s.
Mm-hmm.
Heart disease took over the cause of death on the planet, which should make people wonder why. But let's not go there right now. But the point is, for many years, metabolic syndrome was restricted to just cardiovascular diseases and those three precursors.
Right.
Now it's been expanded. Cancer is now part of metabolic syndrome, the number 2 cause of death. Number 3 cause of death is called neurodegeneration. That's now part of metabolic syndrome. PCOS is now part of metabolic syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So that cluster of mitochondrial dysfunction conditions are all called metabolic syndrome. Now, what I think is really significant is that 40% of Earthlings have metabolic syndrome. That should make everyone sit up and take notice.
Oh, of course.
40% of the Earth's population now struggles to make energy. And if you really want to cut to the chase, the cause of all that is the absolutely outrageous use of high fructose corn syrup that is
Really?
used worldwide.
You think so? Just because of the iron, and then that's preventing copper from being regulated, right?
Absolutely. As soon as copper can't make its way into an animal's body, iron accumulates. And as soon as you've got copper deficiency, you have iron overload, you have mTOR shutting down AMPK, and everything about metabolic syndrome is caused by the silencing of AMPK pathway.
Couldn't
Again,
you
the
say,
struggle here.
couldn't you say, Morley, that those conditions that you mentioned, cardiovascular disease, cancer, and then most neurodegeneration, which you mentioned, ALS, Alzheimer's, and fatty liver disease, PCOS. If you put those all together, I mean, that would be almost 100% of people. It wouldn't be 40%, would it?
Well, worldwide it's 40%. In this country, it's probably about 80%.
Yeah, because I mean, 1 out of 2. I just read some studies recently about cancer, and if you're born after 1960, it used to be 1 out of 3 women would be diagnosed, and 1 out of every 2 men would be diagnosed at some point in their life. But if you're born after 1960, it's now 50% across the board, at least for U.S. So I mean,
Well, in 1900, it was, I believe the statistic was 1% of people would get cancer.
really,
Yeah. And so now it's 1 in 2.
that's
See, those
crazy.
types of statistics, I think what's happened, Justin, is people have become numb to the sensationalism of these statistics.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, okay, yeah, all right. So it's only increasing 10,000 fold every year. It's like,
Right.
but did you just hear what you said? And people don't do that. They can't fathom the magnitude of it because they don't fully understand what AMPK does or what cancer metabolism really. There is no cancer. That disease state does not exist. It's called cancer metabolism.
Mm-hmm.
And what it means is the shorthand description of cancer is oxygen is present, but it can't be metabolized. So the body defaults to anaerobic metabolism. So we want to drive cars that have 140 miles per gallon. And that's what you do when you're driving on fat.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then if we only have access to sugar, we're down to 32 miles per gallon. But that's with oxygen. But if we don't have oxygen, if we can't use oxygen, we're down to 2 miles per gallon. And that's called cancer metabolism. It's slow, and that's why you have this explosive growth in cellular activity, is to try to make up for the loss of energy production per cell.
Do you think that a lot of natural cancer treatments are using oxidative therapies, as you know? ozone and oxygen therapies and things. And do you think that that's why? Because what you just mentioned, I'm wondering if that's why some of these treatments aren't working, because people are taking in oxygen through these different therapies, but they don't have the retinol or the copper to be able to handle and utilize that oxygen in their favor. Do you think that's what's going on?
Uh, I think it's very much what's going on.
Yeah.
Again, people don't understand that in order to metabolize oxygen, you absolutely must have copper enzymes at standing by, ready to metabolize it.
But how,
And again,
Morley, would you, like, if someone did an oxidative therapy like that? Let's say someone is diagnosed with cancer and they go for these, ozone treatments and things, and they go for some of these treatments, and their body's riddled with iron, right? And then their bodies also has very little copper to use. So how would those treatments ever work for someone like that?
the cutting edge therapy, again, we got to back up. What dominates oncology is death to cancer cells.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to kill those cells.
Right.
So your twins are pretty young. In about
Uh-huh.
10 years, they're going to be teenagers,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
And and there's a certain percentage of teenagers that become drug addicts.
Mm-hmm.
Their metabolism changes because of their use of those chemicals. To the world of oncology, they would say we've got to kill all teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
No, that doesn't make any sense at all. Why don't we rehabilitate the teenagers that are struggling with the chemicals they're using and teach them how to live a more balanced life? And that's done all the time. But in the world of medicine, and especially the arcane world of oncology, it's all about killing the cancer cell. What it needs to be done is rehabilitated with copper. And we need to chelate iron, which is the cutting edge modality for cancer treatment now, is iron chelation therapy.
Uh-huh.
And you don't throw oxygen into tissue that has excess iron and very little copper. It's a recipe for disaster. But again, everything is predicated on must kill the cancer cell. No, let's step back and say, how can we rehabilitate and get this cancer cell to make energy in the presence of oxygen? What's missing? And what's the overriding focus of most chemotherapy agents? Is to suck copper out of the cancer cell so it can't metabolize oxygen.
Is that a big result of chemotherapy? It does that?
Absolutely.
Wow. That makes it even worse.
Of course
You
it
know?
does. No, it's
Yeah.
just, and again, and so then think about the fact that they're shoving these chemicals into our body and pretending that it's only going to affect the cancer cells.
Right.
And people really believe that. It's like, well, the 5G doesn't affect me, does it? It doesn't affect you, does it? No, it's going to affect everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't stop and think about that. But again, when people hear the C word, they'll go to the oncologist and say, I don't care what you do, get rid of it. That's been social conditioning for 100 years.
Right. And I guess you could say the same thing if it comes down to really oxidation and a lack of copper to be able to deal with all of this oxygen interacting with iron. I mean, you can see if oxidation is really sort of the cause of all disease, you can imagine how this would be causing like that's the real pandemic.
And so I was, asking a buddy of mine this morning about copper and light, and we were having an interesting exchange.
Mm-hmm.
And because I think that my emerging theory now is that not only does copper metabolize iron and oxygen, I think it's critical for metabolizing light on the planet. And I think in effect what copper does is it creates um, a prism so that people who understand light understand it goes from blue light to red light. There's a whole rainbow in between. And I
Uh-huh.
think it's copper that enables that rainbow to be expressed in the body. But but the point was that I was asking my friend who has a naturopathic degree and a PhD in physics. It's kind of a
Uh-huh.
wicked combination.
Yeah, right.
And he was pointing out that there's two critical receptors in the mitochondria for photons, for light,
Uh-huh.
and copper plays a critical role in regulating those photons, for regulating those receptors. And inspired by that, he gave me the name of the receptors, and I looked it up, and lo and behold, when one of those receptors is activated, it plays a pivotal role in activating the AMPK pathway, and that's now being used to treat cancer. This is like 2019, 2020 research. This is that's bleeding edge research that won't make it into the classroom for another 40 years.
So it's interesting. So the copper we consume and utilize, assuming there's retinol in the diet, is actually helping to utilize frequencies of light. And I think you had a really good quote once, and you quoted, I think, Ray Peat. And I forget
Yeah,
exactly what was that quote. That was really interesting.
it's my favorite quotation of all time. At some point, I would love to have a conversation with Dr. Pete about it, but
Yeah.
it's sunlight is what keeps copper from becoming iron. And it took me probably 3 years to finally figure out what I think he's saying. When most people, again, on this planet are conditioned to think sunlight equals D.
Uh-huh.
Well, that's true. Sunlight does activate what's called the photosynthesis, the photo production of vitamin D, and that's a very good thing.
Uh-huh.
But there's a parallel activity that's called photocatabolism, the breakdown of retinol. And what people don't know is that, while vitamin D is important, I would argue that retinol is probably 100 times more important
Mm-hmm.
because it gets broken up into a whole series of what are called retinoids. And that means that they're very powerful chemicals that are hormones, nuclear receptors, and other metabolic agents that are
Mm-hmm.
critical for the function of our body. Well, in order to make that happen, in order for retinol to start that photocatabolism, you have to have folate. And there's a third thing that sunlight does. There's many things that sunlight does, but these are three
Mm-hmm.
that are principally important. Folate gets activated with sunlight. Now, what most people do not know is that folate has copper inside it. It's a copper-dependent B vitamin. B9 has copper in it. I know that from conversations with Leslie Clavet, a world-renowned copper expert.
Mm-hmm.
And that copper is what enables retinol to become retinoic acid. And that retinoic acid is what enables copper to get loaded into ceruloplasmin to regulate iron so that it doesn't get stuck in the tissue. So that's how sunlight enables copper from becoming iron. And
Wow.
I think it's one of the most sophisticated and clever sayings I've ever heard anyone say as it relates to human physiology.
That's so
And I
so
hope I'm
fast.
right. I
Yeah,
hope I'm
no.
right. I need to get validation from Dr. Pete, but I'm pretty sure I'm on the right path there.
Yeah, man, this is such fascinating stuff. We're going to put links to everything we talk about at extremehealthradio.com/699. I hope you guys are enjoying the show. We're going to take a little break right now. I've got some questions for Morley from our audience, and we'll try to get to those later on in the show. But if you know of anyone that might be dealing or would be interested in this type of information, please share the show with them or tag us on Instagram or do whatever you can to get this message out, because I feel like Morley is really at the cutting edge of disease and what we're really talking about here. And this is building the foundation of your health so that you don't have this oxidation going on, which is causing diseases. This is just fascinating stuff. His website, if you guys want to check it out, and I highly suggest that you do, is rcp123.org, and go there and you can download the root cause protocol for free. He gives away all of the answers all for free, and it's a really cool PDF, and you can join up. And then if you want to take it further, he's got a membership which you can join, which I highly recommend. I mean, this is a guy who's doing research like all day, every day. And, you know, this is one of the reasons why I'm having him on the show often, because he's at the cutting edge of this stuff. So hope you guys are enjoying the show. We're going to take a little break right now. And I want to tell you about one of my favorite products. And this is a little sale going on right now from Daniel Vitalis and our friends over at Sir Thrival. And this is the Elk Velvet Antler product. I love it, and I take it, and I think you should too. Check it out.
Starving for vitality, we're turning to energy drinks, stimulants, and pharmaceuticals to try to improve our focus, increase our metabolism, rescue our sex drive, and adapt to the stresses of modern-day living. Each year, an elk sheds its impressive antlers, regenerating an even larger set the following year. These velvet antlers have been a revered traditional medicine for thousands of years. Elk antler harnesses the adaptogenic and highly regenerative growth factors from this natural and ethical resource into a concentrated, bioavailable extraction. Its revitalizing effects span bone, muscle, and nerve support, improve metabolism, cellular repair, sexual potency, anti-inflammation, vascular strengthening, and hormone production. Humanely harvested from free-range U.S. elk, extracted in organic alcohol, and protected in Miron glass, our elk antler is available in 3 strengths to restore your vitality at any level.
Such drama in the commercial. But this is a great product, guys. I really highly recommend it. And he's running a sale right now. So you're listening to this, or we are recording this, let's see, May 21st, 2021. And the sale goes all the way up to May 28th. 2021, and you can save up to $48 on this, and use the code ROBUST20, and make sure to go through our link if you guys are interested in any of their products. The colostrum we take almost on a daily basis. We love putting that into our coffees and our smoothie. They've got some really great products. I like their pine pollen as well. So the coupon code is ROBUST20, all one word, and you can get up to $48 off. So make sure to do that if you want to work on your hormones and get some of this great products into your system. And then the other product I want to tell you about is we got a little clip here from Dr. Randy Tent, all about jumping up and down on a mini trampoline.
Absolutely. But before I answer that question, you guys are giving such great advice. There's a Bellicon trampoline right behind my desk here, and I go straight to hockey from here. I've been skating with a bunch of guys for a long time, and this guy cornered me one day after I've been skating 6-7 years with these guys, and he said, "Randy, can I talk to you for a second?" I said, "Yeah, what's the matter?" Yeah, I was waiting for a heart question, some complicated health question. He said,
Right.
How do you skate like you do at this age? You skate like an animal. I said, "I've been on a trampoline for 42 years. And one guy said, "Aren't those bad for you? Your kids will get hurt." I said, "That's why your kid can't chew gum and walk." I said, "I raised my kids on a trampoline."
Right.
So you're giving great advice. And I'm going to tell you right now, in the middle of Michigan's winter, the people with the best balance have survived the falls very well. And the balance that I've gotten from the trampoline and the sturdiness to play hockey with the right supplements, that's how I survived playing 4 games a week at 61. Because the trampoline has kept me tight enough to handle this journey, and it adds a density to your body that you're not going to get at the gym.
Dr. Randy Tan, I love that guy. But yeah, so what he's talking about is jumping up and down on one of these mini trampolines, and this is something that I do on a daily basis. I usually take mine outside, and I'll listen to a podcast. I'll jump in the sun, get that full spectrum sunlight. It's a great way to detoxify your body, to improve your lymphatic flow. And it's really, really amazing way to detox your body. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll jump on the trampoline, then I'll get in the sauna afterwards. So it's just a really great product. And what I love about the Bellicon, though, is that it has these foldable legs. So you can just fold the legs and put it, store it underneath your bed. And it also is really silent, too, because it doesn't use those metal springs. It uses these flexi bungee ropes. So it's pretty silent. So you can do it if your kids are sleeping, or you can do it at night. It's just a great habit to get into, and one of the best exercises, in my opinion, that you can do is jumping up and down on a mini trampoline. There's a reason why they use these at most alternative cancer treatment centers around the world. I can't make any claims and can't say it does this or that or the other, but if you go to alternative cancer treatment centers, you'll always find rebounders there, and that's by design. So the Bellicon's the best, and so I really recommend that. We'll put links to that at extremehealthradio.com/699, as well as the Elk Velvet Antler product as well. And I think that's about it. Yeah, so make sure to check out extremehealthradio.com/699, and we'll put links over to our store, which is biochargeme.com. and that's the links to our radio store that we have going on there. And so getting back into Morley's work and back into the mineral balancing, understanding the oxidation and understanding what this excess iron is doing to our tissues is really, really quite fascinating. And if you don't understand that, then you're really not gonna have a foundation upon which to understand how metabolism really works. And Morley, you talk a lot about like harnessing iron and making sure it's working properly. And maybe talk a little bit about the, what is it, reticuloendothelial system, I think. Is that the fancy word for the iron recycling program that you call? The fancy schmancy word?
Fancy schmancy, yeah. I just want to say for the listeners that I would want my springs made out of iron, not made out of copper. So on that trampoline
Nice.
that you use, good to have iron around. It does serve a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
But from a metabolic standpoint, you want to have copper instead. But a lot of people don't know that there's an iron recycling program. And I don't know whether we've talked about this concept or not, but it's an idea that came upon me a few months ago. Most people are familiar with what a farm is. You know, we've been to a farm. Some of us may have grown up on a farm. But the point is, there's one word that dominates the farm. We need to recycle. Because what you're doing on a farm is you're recycling sunlight, you're recycling seed, you're recycling soil, and you're recycling something that begins with S, but we'll just call it waste. And we use that as a fertilizer. And so the whole concept of a successful farm is being able to recycle very effectively. And about 150 years ago, the whole concept of a farm was replaced by a factory. What's the philosophy of a factory? Replace. Instead of recycle, we're going to replace. Oh, you need a new car. You need a new TV. You need a new radio, or whatever the item is. And so we've been conditioned to the factory mentality of replacing things. Well, it turns out that the human body is a little farm, and we're constantly recycling body parts. And depending upon the author, it takes between 2 to 7 years to completely replace every cell in our body. It's absolutely fascinating when you think about it.
Yeah.
And the recycling systems are run by the energy that's provided by copper. You just disappeared.
What's that, Morley?
You just disappeared. I stopped hearing myself in the background. Okay, so you're still there.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No worries.
So we've got these recycling systems are all running on energy, and many of them are running at the direction of copper. Now here's the irony. Copper is a factory worker because it needs to be replaced every day. So the factory worker, copper, needs to be in our diet because it needs to be replaced every day because we use it and then we lose it. Use it, then lose it. And what's happened is the food system has been changed so that it's becoming increasingly difficult to replace that factory worker so we can run our recycling program. And one of the most important functions of AMPK pathway is to make sure that the recycling system called autophagy actually works. One of the most important systems that the body has. But as it relates to iron, we have, in the average man, 5,000 milligrams of iron, and the average woman about 4,000 milligrams of iron. And we're supposed to get 1 milligram of iron in our diet every day. Not the 18 to 27 that people think is required, or the 75 milligrams of iron that's in some prenatals, which is an outrageous level of iron.
Yeah.
But what the body does is we need to replace every second 2 million red blood cells. So you and I have been talking for almost an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Times 60 minutes, times 60 seconds. It's a really big number of red blood cells that we need to replace. Every second, 2 million red blood cells.
Wow.
And that takes a lot of iron, but that also takes a lot of copper to regulate that. And so the recycling system has 25 milligrams of iron in that in that 24-hour recycling system. There's 25 milligrams of iron to support the body's need for bazillions of red blood cells.
Okay.
And 24 of those 95% of the iron is coming from the recycling system that's made possible because copper allows the iron out of the recycling macrophages to get into the blood system, get hooked up to transferrin, get back to the bone marrow, where it gets turned into what are called erythroid cells that then become red blood cells.
So Morley, what
And-
happens when this iron is not, because you mentioned just a second ago that this iron is definitely useful and needed in the body to do certain things. So when the
Right.
iron is being, because there's two things going on, it seems like, with this recycling system, the iron isn't able to get back to the red or to the bone marrow, right? And it's getting stuck in tissue. And when it gets stuck in tissue, it's oxidizing, causing all kinds of other problems. But what happens when that iron is not able to be used in the way that it's supposed to be used? What other things are happening aside from the oxidation and rust?
Well, what people need to understand is that 70% of the iron in our body is used as a waiter to carry oxygen and hemoglobin.
Okay.
So that's a huge bolus of iron used to be a passive agent to carry oxygen. Another 10% is used to carry oxygen into the muscle, and it's called myoglobin. It's storing oxygen in the muscle.
Okay.
So you got 80% of your iron is tied up in a holding pattern with oxygen. Passive doesn't activate it. It's copper that activates the oxygen. Iron is just holding it. But then you've got iron sulfur clusters. They're very important proteins. You have heme proteins that are used not just for making hemoglobin, but for making other metabolic activity.
Mm-hmm.
And the body has a need for iron, but it has been overblown in terms of it's been turned into what people think is an active agent, when in fact it's an inert agent. And the intelligence of the body is in copper, directing the activity that involves iron. And that's not taught. That's not openly understood in practitioner circles. They think that they are equal in terms of intelligence, and they're not. You've got a dumb waiter, and you've got this really very intelligent chef activating oxygen all over the body and deactivating oxidants. And the the gap in people's understanding is like the Grand Canyon, because there's just an enormous shortage of awareness about how critical copper is to run and regulate our metabolism.
What do you think would have happened had we not done the iron recycling system in 41 and 69? Had we not done that, what do you think would have happened to human longevity? Do you think we would have, I'm guessing we would have been a lot healthier, a lot less cancer, right?
Yeah, I think what you're referring to was the decision in the UK, the Canada, and the United States to add iron filings to the food system in 1941. Nobody knows what the initial amount was. Then it was increased. They were going to increase it 300%, but then they chose to just increase it 50%, like they were doing us a favor. And there's nothing more toxic than adding iron. Again, go back to mTOR. As soon as you put iron filings into the body, you're going to activate mTOR, which means you're going to shut down AMPK. This isn't like, well, it's Tuesday, maybe we'll do. We're talking about conserved metabolic pathways that go back millions of years ago.
Right.
They react to these minerals in very precise, predictable ways. And so in the presence of iron, the body behaves a certain way. In the presence of copper, the body behaves in a very different way. And so when you start to add oxygen and light to that, suddenly you better have someone regulating it. And of course, we love a sunny day, but we're not thinking about what is the oxidation that's attached to sunlight. People, our ancestors used to wash their clothes and hang them outside. Why did they hang them outside? Because sunlight oxidizes the clothing to make sure that it's free of bacteria. Did you know that?
Yeah, well, I've been understanding a little bit about that in relationship to this big C little v going on right now, and that. So yeah, I have been reading about that.
Yeah. So, but most people are using dryers and didn't know that. Oh, if you put it on a clothesline, your clothing's actually going to be safer for you. It's not going to have bacteria in it. And so it's just these subtle aspects of our life. And so why did I make the comment about Dr. Fauci and ivermectin? Well, what I'm coming to learn is there are really only two pathogens on the planet. You have bacteria and you have parasites. We're trained to think that fungus is bad. Well, in an iron toxic environment, yeah, yeast can become pathogenic. But that's because it's been altered by the environment. And then we find out that what is a virus? It's the metabolic waste of the virus breaking down tissue. Basically, what the parasite does is it hijacks the immune system. The immune system, you've heard of autoimmune conditions, right? Well, autoimmune is just redirecting the intelligence of the immune system to a negative end at the direction of a parasite, creating waste, and in that waste is something called DNA. And that's called virus. Virus is dead tissue. It's basically the waste matter that's left from the activity of a parasite. And that's why there was such controversy 13 months ago when Trump made the comment about hydroxychloroquine.
Right.
Because it destabilized the narrative that we have this virus to be afraid of. And it turns out that hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin stop parasites in their tracks and have for decades, and they became vilified because they were going to kill the game plan.
Yeah,
and so we live in this very false world now.
Yeah, no, I mean,
if
they had done that, then they wouldn't have been able to have an emergency and be able to get these vaccines going, because you can't have any other treatment that works and also try to force vaccines on people. So, I mean, it's amazing.
And so the so-called infection that was all statistically generated was created to justify the vaccine. But it's not a vaccine, it's actually a shot. It's an experimental shot. There's no aspect of it that's quote unquote a vaccine. And I had a very interesting encounter with a client earlier this week. A 90-minute conversation with the mom and the 19-year-old daughter. And we spent an hour talking about her amazing response to the RCP. She was clearly, she presented as anemic, and 6 months later, she is a perfect specimen of a 19-year-old in terms of her blood chemistry, all responding to the nutrients of the RCP. And then the mom said, well, we have an issue we need to talk about. And it was dealing with this daughter's desire to go back to college, and the fact that the college is mandating that she have the shot before she come back on campus.
Interesting.
And we spent 30 minutes talking about the insanity of that decision. And how did the conversation end? The 19-year-old said, you presented really good information, but I just want to be with my friends, so I'll get the shot.
You're kidding me. That was her reason?
No, absolutely. And that's the reasoning of a 19-year-old. Go back to when you were 19. Justin. We saw the world very differently. We wanted to be in a community. We wanted to be in a club. We wanted to be in a social circle. And we didn't care what was going on in the world.
Right.
I
Right.
remember that time. I remember being in college and wanting to belong.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all she cared about was belonging. And she's not thinking about the second and third order effects of this chemical that's going to go in and possibly threaten her ability to have children in the future.
And you told her all this.
Absolutely told her that.
Yeah.
And the mother said, "Thank you. You're reinforcing things that I've been trying to say to her without, it wasn't scripted in any way."
Right.
But she didn't want to hear any of it because she just wanted to go back and be with her friends.
Even though you had her on the root cause protocol and she was doing a lot better and turned her health around, she still wanted to do that.
Yeah.
That's
So
amazing.
again, I bring it up that's the reason why I spell Fauci's name the way I do, Fauxci, is we live in a false world now, where people base decisions on feelings, not on facts. I want to be with my friends. That's more important to me than the factual reality that this chemical may kill me, or may alter my physiology. That to me is a frightening new world. That's why I use that phrase in my email to you. It's a brave, frightening world that we're entering, because it's based on feelings and not on facts. And I'm a pretty soft guy. I mean, I have feelings, and I know you do too. But I really pride myself in having balance and understanding the science of what's going on, not just some emotive expression that might be running through my body at some point. So it's a little scary what's happened. And because people don't know what AMPK is, they think it's okay to get a shot.
Yeah, I wonder if there's much more of a dangerous reaction to this as a result of people being just overloaded with iron. I would imagine that's the case. When they get the vaccines.
Of course there is.
Yeah.
See, people, the whole crisis that took place was a cytokine storm. People have heard that phrase, but they didn't know what that meant. Well, cytokines are part of the immune system, but what's playing in the background is the field that the cytokines have got to play in is called ferritin. And when there's a lot of ferritin in the blood, then you can have a field day with the cytokines. And so what people don't realize is that the ferritin that's showing up in the blood, that protein, is actually empty in the blood. It's like empty shotgun shells. The iron has already been discharged in the tissue that was being ravaged. And in this case, it might have been the lung tissue, might have been liver tissue, might have been other parts of the body. And that's where the iron crisis is that was feeding the cytokine storm that led to people's immune system to collapse.
Do you think there's anything that people can do once they've received this injection that they can do to cleanse their body of whatever the heck this thing is?
Well, that's a great question. I'm not sure, but let's think it through. Most of the reactions that people are having with the bleeding, the bruising, the disorders that are showing up are all related to microcirculation. And microcirculation is different than macrocirculation. Macrocirculation is it's the arteries and the veins and the movement of blood at a very macro level. Microcirculation is where it's literally where the vessel artery meets the vessel vein at a micro level in the tissue. It's where the exchange takes place. Well, that microcirculation is ruled by copper. And that work was done by Dale Schuske, 2005 to 2009. He nailed it in a series of studies that he did to prove beyond any doubt that copper regulates the microcirculation. And so what I'm piecing together is that if you're getting this experimental shot, it's destroying your microcirculation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's only one way to do that. So I would be looking for some form of copper to reestablish its role in the body. The challenge we've got is, to my knowledge, there isn't a shot that you can get to get copper, but there are efforts being made by a lot of different people, and I think one of the more exciting ones is the people who do make the nano silver are now making a nano copper, and it's going to be. I think it's just now coming to the forefront, and I think that's a very exciting development. That there may be something that might be available to help offset this metabolic insanity that's being created.
Yeah, I think I heard you talking about this on Robert's show.
Yeah.
And is that a product I think you said you're working on developing as well?
And what I'm working on is something that's more food-based, where it's going to be copper coupled with either beef liver or copper coupled with spirulina. So the one that Robert was talking about is a liquid, and the ones that I'm talking about are going to be food-based forms that'll be in a capsule.
We have a bunch of questions here that we'll only be able to take a few just for time purposes, but this kind of goes in line with what you were just talking
questions?
about.
Are you kidding? There would be questions? I can't believe that.
I know, right? Zarambu on Instagram says, has Morley found any alternative ways for increasing copper other than food? And you kind of this is why you just touched on this, right?
Yeah, people are always looking for a copper supplement. And unfortunately, copper does not lend itself typically to a supplement form. And it's a very long and complicated explanation, but the best forms of copper that people can get are bee pollen, real vitamin C that has the tyrosinase enzyme in it, and beef liver are some of your best. Now, there are other forms. There's oysters, mushrooms. There's a lot of different foods out, nuts, particularly like pistachios or cashews. But again, all of this, we are subject to what is the growing conditions of these foods that are being produced.
Right.
Are the farmers that are producing these foods mindful of the soil's need for minerals in general and copper in particular? It's the most glaring defect in farming. And what's the number one deficiency on the farm for the last 60 years? It's copper deficiency.
Copper, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you say in one interview that it's down 80% worldwide?
Yeah.
Is that right?
That's the work of McCants and Widdowson and the people who've continued their research from they were paragons of research from the 1930s to the 1970s, and then people have picked up their research since then.
We'll take a couple more questions, and then I want to ask you about the root cause protocol and how people can join up with that and get involved with that.
Sure.
Lucas Sebastian wants to know, Instagram, is ferritin ideally supposed to be 0? Loaded question.
Loaded question.
Yep.
So in my conversation with Douglas Kell, who's a world-renowned iron expert, that was his answer. And he understands ferritin in a way that few humans understand it. He was being very precise and very scientific with his response. In the real world, I think it's very hard to get it down to 0. So I typically focus on around 20 to 30, and some of the more enlightened practitioners seem to be hovering around that. What I think the caller's question is what happens if it goes below 20? The research seems to indicate that's a sign of parasites in the spleen. And if it gets above 150 for a woman and above 300 for a man, it seems to indicate some kind of pathogenic dynamic in the liver. But is it possible to get it down to 0? I think it is, but we live in a very different world than our ancestors, and we're exposed to so much iron now that I think it's almost imperative that we have that protein in order to protect us from the the bolus of iron that we're exposed to.
Mm-hmm. We'll take a couple more. Cecilia for Health wants to know about calcium deposits in the vertebrae, arthritis, aka spondylitis. If you have any thoughts on that.
Iron has a unique ability on the planet. Iron is the only element that can cause calcium loss from hard tissue and cause calcium buildup in soft tissue.
Really?
And yeah. So all atherosclerosis and all osteoporosis are caused by iron. So that as soon as someone has osteoporosis, I know they've got heart disease. So what the question that the caller is asking about is calcification above and beyond what's in the bone tissue. Again, that's from excess iron. That's aggravating the release of calcium. The body has a very precise process that it goes through to respond to stress.
Mm-hmm.
When you have stress, you have magnesium loss, then you have electrolyte dysfunction, followed by energy loss, followed by inflammation, and then that inflammation is trying to repair the tissue, but then that tissue gets patched over by calcification. When a hard tissue is creating calcification, it's because the recycling program in that cell is not working properly, and it's being aggravated by the excess presence of iron.
Wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that. So that's so unique for iron to be able to cause two different reactions of calcium in the body. That's fascinating.
And what, back to the earlier question, the previous question, the most important dynamic in the bone matrix, what the listeners don't know is that there's actually 4 different forms of ferritin. 3 of them are found inside the cell. Only 1 is found in the blood. And the one in the blood, again, is empty, doesn't have iron in it. But there's 2 very important forms of ferritin in the cell. There's heavy chain and light chain. Heavy chain has copper enzyme function to allow iron to get in and iron to get out. Light chain only lets iron in. And so if you want to avoid osteoporosis, you want to have copper in your diet to enable the production of ferritin heavy chain so that there can be proper iron recycling in the bone marrow the way it's supposed to be done in a healthy human being.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does. That's so interesting.
So
All right.
ferritin is critical to avoid osteoporosis.
Yeah, and you said 3 inside the cell and 1 outside the cell.
Yeah, and the one that I didn't mention was the mitochondrial ferritin, which is critical, but it also has the copper ferroxidase function. And if it doesn't, that's what creates the holy mess inside the mitochondria to create the metabolic chaos that's caused metabolic syndrome.
That's so crazy. I'm just laughing. I mean, how much time do you spend each day reading these articles and researching?
Usually around 3 hours. Usually around 3 hours.
That's awesome. All right, final question, then we're going to get into the root cause protocol and how people can join up with you there at RCP123. This comes from 8024 on Instagram, and I apologize to everyone else who asked questions. We could only get through so much. This one's kind of a loaded one as well. Strategy to stop hair loss and promote hair growth. I don't know if they're a man or a woman, so I don't know.
Very, very important question. One of my students is a body worker, very, very gifted body worker. And she's also studied traditional Chinese medicine. And the kidney meridian runs to the scalp. It's fascinating. And if you look up in traditional Chinese medicine, you'll understand that kidney vitality drives hair vitality.
Interesting.
So what's also important to understand is that the hair follicle is easily oxidized. And what's important to understand is that there needs to be a regular process to um, bring nutrition to the scalp and to the hair follicle. And
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of the problems that are associated with hair loss are attached to either poor kidney health or poor scalp nutrition. Now, the most amazing head of hair I ever saw was on one of Dr. Liz's clients in Chicago. She was in her, I'd say, mid 40s,
Mm-hmm.
just gorgeous head of hair. And I asked her, I said, I can't help but be impressed with your hair. Could you tell me how you take care of it?
Yeah.
And she turned beet red. And she said, do you promise you'll never tell anyone? I said, oh, sure.
Of course.
And her grandmother was Polish. And she taught her the best way to wash your hair is to use pig lard, the fat. And that fat nourishes the hair follicle and provides the nutrition that's needed in order to allow proper hair metabolism to take place at the hair follicle, because the hair itself is dead,
Uh-huh.
but it's the hair follicle that needs to be alive. And, was that just folklore? And not by the beauty of her hair. So it's just what we're witnessing today, though, is think about all of the women who worry about their hair thinning. Think about all the guys who have bald heads now because they shave because they don't want people to know that they are completely bald,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we have this unprecedented and counterintuitive nutrition. So I think we're back to kidney health and scalp nutrition. And what the more progressive articles about hair health will tell you is that oxidative stress, particularly hydrogen peroxide, which needs to be neutralized by copper enzymes, is
Mm-hmm.
usually at the basis of all hair loss. It's an oxidative storm that's causing the breakdown.
That's so cool. Interesting. Yeah. So if people want to get involved in what you're doing, there's the rcp123.org. You can join up and get the root cause protocol. And then there's a community. For right now, prices may change, I'm assuming, but it's $9.97 a month. But then if someone just wants to get help, they can connect up with an RCP consultant. And you have other
That's right.
things people can do too, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have a master class. We'll be offering it again in the fall, and we're just trying to decide what the topics are going to be. But I know one of them is going to be around energy production. I'm sure that another one's going to be around vitamin D. People always want to know about vitamin D, and we're thinking about having one directed just at maternal and fetal health. We think that's a really important topic for people to better understand. And then the ultimate participation is for people to take the RCP Institute training. It's a 16-week program. It costs about $2,500,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a wonderful program to allow people to really understand how their body works and get a much better handle of what are the variables that are really driving the metabolic dysfunction that we have been talking about today. And again, it's going to revolve around the same cast of characters: magnesium, copper, and iron, oxygen, light, sugar, fat metabolism. There's some really critical components that people need to understand in order to really understand how to optimize the production of ATP. And it's not like there's 1,000 things. There's just, maybe 10 to 12 things we have to really focus on.
And I love your work so much because it's very similar to something I heard years ago from David Wolf when he was talking about Chinese medicine, and he was just talking about all the medicinal herbs and different mushrooms and things, and there's literally just hundreds and hundreds of things and like herbs and supplements you could take, but he was always just saying, just find the top 5 or the top 3 and just focus on those ones, focus on those mushrooms. And you've done similar work, but with something I think is much more foundational, which is the mineral balance of how your body works. And you've done that with minerals and iron and copper and vitamin A, retinol, and magnesium, you know? So it's nice when you can have a foundation and understand that you don't have to learn like everything. You can just learn the foundation, and that foundation in turn controls just about everything in the human body, you know?
Well, I think the important pivot point for people to understand is we're here to make energy. In order to be productive, we've got to make energy. We're here to do things. And the minute we're not making energy, we're creating oxidative stress. So that when we activate oxygen, it becomes water, and that releases energy molecules. If we're not able to activate oxygen, we are creating what are called oxidants. Accidents with oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
It's also called reactive oxygen species. It's also called reactive oxygen stress. So as soon as we've got oxygen, we've got to go one way or the other. Either we're going to make energy or we're going to make exhaust.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as people realize they have fatigue, they are exhausted, it means they are not activating oxygen the way they need to. And that means they don't have enough bioavailable copper, and they need to begin to question their diet. They got to question, do I have too much iron in my system? Am I not eating the right kinds of foods that are supporting my body's need for key nutrients? It's not that complicated. It really isn't.
And finally, what is what is it? The RCP 101 video series for $99. What do people get with that?
It's a 4.5-hour conversation between me and Dr. Ben Edwards, who was the first physician who went through my training. And he's a family practitioner, internist in Lubbock, Texas. He recently testified he was one of 4 physicians that was selected to testify in the Texas legislature to explain what the downside might be to this experimental shot. Very savvy guy, went through traditional medical education, got his MD degree, went through functional medicine certification, and then he went through the RCP, and he said, now I can finally help people with the RCP.
That's awesome. That's great. That's very, very cool.
Really, really cool guy. And we do a monthly radio show. He has a radio show called You're the Cure, and his program and your program are the 2 mainstay dates that I can always count on to have these regular, thoughtful conversations about what's really happening inside our body.
That's awesome. Yeah, what a cool thing. I'm going to look up his radio station because I'm always listening to podcasts and stuff like that. So I'll check him out. That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, the hardest question of the day, Morley, I've got it for you now. Okay. What are you going to do the rest of today?
What
do you got planned? That's a hard
question. I have another podcast in about half an hour.
Oh, cool.
Yep. And then we've got dinner, and we might go to the movies tonight.
Really? They've opened movie theaters where you are?
Oh, yeah. Now, there are not a lot of people in there, which is actually kind of cool. It's like going to a private showing. Wow. But we sit in the back, and we watch different shows, and it's been a lot of fun.
Wow, that's pretty cool. What movies playing? Are there movies coming out now? I don't even keep up with that.
No, there are very few movies that are out there. But this one I think is called Dream Horse. It's supposed to be really good. It's a true story about a woman who just puts it all in 24 black, and she raises this horse, and it becomes this award-winning, money-producing racer. So
yeah, I'm checking it out right now. That looks pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, awesome. Thanks so much, Morley. So I'll let you go so you can kind of regain your energy for the next podcast. And I appreciate it. I appreciate your time. And I think you're on the schedule, right? Are we doing every other month, I think?
I think that is it. Yeah. Because I've got I plotted out to, I think, March of next year.
Okay, good.
That's
Good.
as
I want to
far
make
out
sure.
as I could go.
Good.
Yeah,
I want to make sure you're on. All right, my friend. Thank you again for your time and your energy and sharing
absolutely.
that with us. I really appreciate it, man.
And maybe one of these sessions, we ought to just do a Q&A, straight up Q&A.
That
That
would
might
be
be fun.
cool.
Yeah. So
Okay.
if you think that makes sense, I'd be happy to do that.
I
'Cause
think that would be
I
a
know
lot of
there's
fun.
always questions out there. So,
Yeah, that would be great because there's a bunch we didn't get to today. So that'd be awesome.
all right. Well, you have
All
it.
right, my
Okay,
friend.
Should I flip the question around? And what are you going to do the rest of the day?
Oh, geez. Well, let's see. Right now, I'm gonna go eat some food, and then I'm gonna go do my workout. I have a Friday workout. I'll do that outside, and then I'm on kid duty, so I'll be helping Kate the rest of the day with our little twins.
Awesome. Well, that'll be
Yeah,
a
we
lot
might
of fun.
go walk in the hills. It's a beautiful day here, so we might go to the beach. Who knows?
But just remember, your kids are easiest at this age.
Yeah, they're 3. You think so?
Oh, it's going to get more exciting.
Okay. I was hoping for some
Give
good
yourself,
news.
yeah, give yourself about 10 years, and then you're going to go, oh my gosh.
Wow. Yep, that's going to be amazing. All right, my
All right.
friend. Thank you again so much.
You bet. You take care.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, there you go, my friends. Mr. Morley Robbins. I will put links to, if you guys are interested, and I'll put links to the RCP 101 video series. I'll put like direct links to each of these things if you're interested, as well as the RCP community, which is $9.97 a month. And then I'll link also to the training program that he's got, as well as the 101 video series. So I'll put links to all of that stuff at extremehealthradio.com/699. So I've got a couple things I'd like to share with you after the break, and some insights from today's show and some other thoughts as well. So let's do this. Let's take a little break right now. And we'll do a little break, and then I'll come back and we'll kind of chit chat for a couple more minutes. And that'll be a good time. I'll be right back, and we're going to learn from Stephanie Seneff about red light therapy.
Your commercial was interesting to me because it turns out that infrared light is a very special light that grows the exclusion zone. I don't know if you've talked to Gerald Pollack. Have you ever interacted with Gerald Pollack?
Yeah, he's been on the show. He's great.
Yeah, because he's the one that I learned this from one of his papers, that when you expose the body to infrared light, and they found that the exclusion zone water, which is that special structured water that's created by the sulfates in the blood, that grew by a factor of 4 in the response to the red light, the infrared light, which is going to be in the red light. They're going to have some infrared there. And one of the key benefits of the red light might be increasing that exclusion zone, which is going to actually increase the strength of the battery, which is going to supply more energy to the cells, because that exclusion zone is the basis of the battery, I believe, that supplies electricity to the body.
Yeah, it helps the mitochondria create ATP, and it just
exactly.
shrinks the respiratory proteins. I mean, light therapy is huge. Yeah, light therapy is one of the things I really love what Morley talked about, that sunlight is what prevents copper from turning into iron. That's fascinating stuff. And so many of you guys probably know that, I'm a big fan of red light therapy and light therapy in general, and managing your light environment, and how critically important it is to make sure that you're doing that. But one of the things you could do with targeted red light therapy is shine that on your body and even your genitals to help the production of hormones. And it's an amazing therapy to do. And I do it every single day for 10 minutes. And I use the Joovv red light therapy device, which is in our store. And it's really great to allow the mitochondria to make more water. It repairs the sun-damaged skin. It's really great for acne, for collagen production, for muscle recovery and peak performance, with scars and wrinkles and preventing stretch marks, for wound healing, for anti-aging, for reducing joint inflammation and infertility, as well as inflammation all over the body. Anything to do with the skin, like rosacea, acne, wrinkles, burns, things like that. And if you have a surgery, red light therapy is really great for that. It's called photobiomodulation, or LLLT, low level light therapy. And there's thousands of studies that you can go on PubMed and check these things out. But it's just incredible therapy to get into. and to utilize for your own health. So I'd really recommend getting a red light therapy device and bringing it into your home and just doing 10 minutes a day. And you'll notice the difference. It is incredible, incredible therapy. And I'm so blessed to be able to recommend the Joovv red light therapy device that's available on biochargeme.com. I think we may have a discount. I'm not sure. But there's a 60-day trial and there's financing available if you're interested. It comes with a 2-year warranty, and it's just a really amazing device. So make sure to check that out. And I'll put a link to it at extremehealthradio.com/699. And finally, here's our buddy Christopher Shea talking about another form of light therapy, which is sauna therapy. Check this out.
How do I detoxify from plastics? I mean, you guys are using a sauna, and that's something I'd like to get. And what does the sauna do for us? A sauna is great. It's moving a number of different toxins. Remember, we talked about the mice, that if you put PCBs in there, then that made the mercury all that much worse. And sweating moves out a lot of plastics, volatiles, fat-based toxins. It's really good at moving those out and sweating those out. So that's how you're getting those out, and those are contributing to this synergistic soup inside the body. And so that's why they're good, is they're taking out a bunch of the different things in the soup.
Yeah, so what happens is that our fat cells hold on to toxins and chemicals and things like that we're exposed to in our environment. And last I checked, I think there was like 84,000 chemicals in commerce and 60,000 new chemicals invented in a lab somewhere since the 1960s, probably multiple labs. But there's chemicals all around us, and these things get stored in our body. And if your body's not working correctly, you're not going to be able to push these things out. So it's really important to make sure that you're allowing your body to bypass the liver and kidney and to sweat these toxins and these things out of your skin. And this is the benefit of doing sauna therapy in a parasympathetic state where you're just sitting and relaxing. And so this is what's really important about sauna therapy, is that you can literally just sit there in the chair, and within 10 minutes, you're sweating profusely. And what I love about the sauna that we recommend, which is the Relax Far Infrared sauna, is that it's portable. You can loan it to a friend. It's not this big thing you have to put together or knock a wall out or anything. And the light inside, it feels like heat, but it's really light. And there's silver lining on the inside. It's not really, it doesn't look like reflective silver on the inside, but it's lined with silver, a silver material, and that acts as like being in a mirrored light box. And so the heat is distributed evenly all throughout your body, and it just feels like heat, but it's really light. It's a light therapy device. And what it's causing the fat cells to do is to oscillate and to squeeze. And then through the sweat, this gets excreted through your skin. And so sauna therapy is just another one of those things that we should all be doing on a regular basis. And what I love about the Relax sauna is that, like I said, it's portable. Your head sticks out. The time can go by super easy by watching a documentary or something like that, reading a book. And I just love this thing. It should be, I think, required for every home in the United States, I think. But we also offer many other types of saunas too, like the big wooden ones. We offer the near-infrared ones with the red light. We offer the ozone saunas, the lie-down saunas. There's a ton of different saunas on our store, biochargeme.com. The one that I'm most familiar with, I've used all the other ones, but the one I'm most familiar with and the one that I use most often is the Relax Far Infrared sauna. So check those out. I'll put a link to them at extremehealthradio.com/699 if you want to check it out. That's the show page for today's show. So yeah, make sure to check all those out. And I'm curious what you think of that show. Really interesting, right? Lots of good information, I think. And what I thought was really interesting was how iron causes calcium loss in the hard tissue, but build up in the soft tissue. It's wild how iron can make calcium do two different things based on the tissue, whether it's hard or soft tissue in the body, which is interesting. And I really like what he said too about the nano silver and the nano copper too. The nano silver might be something that we can look into, because we have a bunch of silver that we use topically on different things, but generally it's not recommended because of what it does. Apparently it causes the ceruloplasmin protein to fold I think it makes it fold to the right instead of to the left. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and so when these proteins get misfolded like that, it's a dangerous thing. And this is what's causing these injections people are getting. is causing this prion buildup in the brain. And apparently what's happening is that these prions are forcing proteins to fold incorrectly. And when proteins fold incorrectly and then they attach to another protein, it causes that protein to fold incorrectly as well. And when it does this hundreds of thousands of times every minute, what it's doing is it's causing the tissue to become like a sponge. And so what it's showing up as and identifying as, and it looks just like what they're saying mad cow disease was, where it basically just liquefies your organs. And so who knows if that's actually going to be the case with these injections people are getting. But, it's very important to make sure that these proteins are folding correctly. And apparently silver, it's what causes this ceruloplasmin protein to fold incorrectly and to leak out copper. And so just for a little like refresher, in case you don't remember, copper is supposed to, via retinol, true vitamin A, animal fat, to load into this ceruloplasmin protein. And then as long as copper's in that protein, it can be harnessed and utilized by the body for a number of different actions inside the body. But the main one is dealing with all this excess iron that we've been exposed to. So if you don't have copper or you don't have retinol, you're not going to get that reduction in oxidative stress. But also you need to learn how to reduce your iron. So make sure to look at any food you consume and make sure there's not a lot of iron or no iron in it. Really, really important. And also the other thing to check with food too is vitamin D in food. You don't want to consume any foods with vitamin D. And then you also don't want to consume any foods with these oxidized lipids and oils like canola oil and these types of really damaging oils, because this is really what's causing, on top of the oxidizing of the iron, it's the oxidizing of these fats like canola oil and all these other types of oils that are just really causing havoc in the body. So make sure there's none of those oils in the food you're eating, or vitamin D, or iron. So whole long list of things to make sure to avoid. But yeah, so the reduction of iron is really important. And so making sure that you're doing things on a regular basis to reduce the amount of iron you have in your body. There have been a few practitioners on our show talking about sweating and how you can actually reduce iron through sweating, but I don't think you can reduce it enough. This is why we like to recommend blood donations on a regular basis. So Morley recommends for a man to donate four times a year. And I just do it at the change of every season, which is really just makes it easy to remember. So that's every 3 months. The Red Cross will tell you every 56 days is when you can do it, but it makes it easy just to do it 4 times a year. And that gives you 3 months of recovery and building up your endothelio, reticulo, whatever it is, system, iron recycling system. So every 4 months or 3 months, 4 times a year for men. And then for women, postmenopausal women, do the same, follow the same as men, every 3 months. And then premenopausal women, it's recommended twice a year because you have the monthly bleed. So really, really important to make sure you're on top of your blood donations. Really important. There's other things you can do to reduce iron that we won't talk about today, but lots of interesting ideas here from Morley, and I hope that his talk here helped you understand the basis of what's going on inside your body, because like he mentioned, these things are metabolisms. Like this is how the body is functioning. It's not just getting rid of a tumor, or it's not just getting rid of a certain pathology, or reducing. It's like when people reduce their blood pressure, not knowing that the invisible process that's causing the harm is still happening in the background. They just lowered some artificial number. It's not cutting out a tumor. It's re-educating your body to not make tumors. Really, is what this is all about. But this also gets into cardiovascular disease. So if you're feeling like you don't have a lot of energy, if your energy is depleting, or if you've got anything chronic going on. And we didn't even get into, Alzheimer's disease, ALS, multiple sclerosis, any of these neurodegenerative diseases. We didn't get into that, or really much about non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, but PCOS. All these things have a mineral component, guys, and just make sure that you're on top of increasing your magnesium. So the basic idea is increasing your magnesium. And there's different ways to do that. And you should have a magnesium protocol every single day. So that could be magnesium foot baths, taking a bath every day with magnesium chloride or sulfate. I like chloride better, but either one of those will work. Maybe a magnesium bath and then the magnesium spray. Jumping in the ocean if you live close to the ocean like we do. What else is there? Magnesium bicarbonate, which is in liquid form, which we make. And there's a video inside our Extreme Health Academy about how to do that. And what else? There's magnesium supplements and then foods that are high in magnesium as well. So there's lots of different ways to get magnesium into your body. And this should be something that you do every single day, as well as the copper as well. So he talked about beef liver, whole food vitamin C, not the outer shell, which is ascorbic acid. The outer shell doesn't contain the nutrients like that. I think there's all kinds of factors, J factors, P factors, things like that inside whole food vitamin C that you just don't get with ascorbic acid. And not only that, it's not like it's inert and you don't get those substances. Ascorbic acid actually causes the ceruloplasmin protein to misfold. So there's a dual effect there. You're not getting the benefits, but you're also getting the harm because of what it does to that protein. So what is it? Beef liver, whole food vitamin C. What's the other one? Oh, bee pollen and oysters and some mushrooms as well are high in copper. So those are foods that are high in copper that you would want to start adding into your diet. So start adding magnesium, start adding copper, and then the next thing you want to do is add retinol in your diet. And Morley recommends cod liver oil, I think, for that. I'm not convinced on that. I don't know. Judging by the work of Adam Bergstrom and yellow fat disease and looking at what that does, I don't know. I'm not convinced yet. But anyway, you could try it. Cod liver oil and retinol. What is that? Like egg yolks, cheese, milk, eggs, butter, these types of things will be high in retinol as well. And so making sure you're getting some of that in to make sure that copper gets loaded into that protein. So that's kind of just the basics of it. But then you can target also specific conditions that you might have. And then also being on the blood donation. So these are all things that we talk about as well inside the Extreme Health Academy. So come inside and join us. If you guys want to join, I would really recommend joining either his or ours or both, and joining people that are putting out content like this that can really help you. So join the RCP 123, the Root Cause Protocol, $10 a month. Ours is $20 a month. And we have so much content. And so we piece together all the different aspects of health, light, spirituality, emotions, all that stuff. We've got workshops every single month. We have new courses every single month. We have a live Zoom session every Friday morning with myself. And then Dr. Bergman does a live once a month. And then Kate, my wife, does a women's wellness live on the first and third Wednesdays of every month. So a ton of live events going on every single month inside the Extreme Health Academy. Lots of cool stuff happening. So I'd recommend joining someone's courses like that, because this is premium content that you're not going to get anywhere else. And, people like us are putting out good content and content that helps people really at the fundamental level. So if you want to take your health further, definitely consider joining the Extreme Health Academy and the Root Cause Protocol. And if you join, I'd love to say hello to you and help you out personally. I'm in the forums just about every single day. And some other ways, we had a few emails asking about how to support us. Some other ways to support us are our Amazon link on our homepage. I'm not a big fan of Amazon, but if you're gonna shop on Amazon, go through somebody's link. It doesn't have to be ours. I'd appreciate it if you went through our link, but go through someone's link so that you support their work as well. There's a link on the front page of extremehealthradio.com for Amazon. I should put it in our Instagram bio too. And then what else? You can donate. Some people donate on Patreon, $5-10 a month if you like our work. And then there's our store, biochargeme.com. So we have everything from juicers to blenders to Rife machines to ozone machines to all kinds of cool things. The Bellicon, the Rebounder, the supplements. We've got a lot of Matt Blackburn's products in there. I love his stuff for targeted supplementation. The vitamin E he's got so many great products over there. The enzymes, he's got a really, really awesome array. I think he's coming out with a magnesium supplement soon and a vitamin C supplement. So if you go through our link on biochargeme.com for Matt's products, use the code EHR15. I think that will give you 15% off, and that'll support Matt. This is the cool thing about this. it'll support Matt's work, it'll support my work, and it will help you. So it's a trifecta on the wins there. So again, thank you for sharing our shows. That's a really big way you can support us. If you like it, do this. Do a little Instagram story and then tag us. And then we'll share that story in our story. So to let people know about what you're doing. So I love that. So do a little Instagram story and tag us in there. And that way people will get to know our work and things like that. So anyway, love you guys so much. Thank you again for your support over the years. It's just been amazing to just be doing this type of work and helping as many people as we possibly can. So I really appreciate it so much. You guys are amazing. And that's it. Yeah, thanks again. And I'll put all the links to all of this stuff, even Matt's stuff, over at extremehealthradio.com/699. I'll see you next week. And we'll be with Dr. Fisher talking about traction and the spinal health and all kinds of cool stuff going on there. And if you're an Academy member, I'll see you at 9 a.m. Pacific next Friday morning. All right. Love you guys, and I will see you soon.
No material on this blog is intended to suggest that you should not seek professional medical care. Always work with qualified medical professionals, even if you educate yourself in the field of live food, nutrition, and alternative medicine. I'm not a doctor, nor am I offering readers medical advice of any kind. None of the information offered here should be interpreted as a diagnosis of any disease, nor an attempt to treat or prevent any disease or condition. While information in this blog is discussed in the context of numerous conditions, it can be dangerous to take action based on any information in this blog or to start any health program without first consulting a health professional. The content found here is for informational purposes only and is in no way intended as medical advice, as a substitute for medical counseling, or as a treatment/cure for any disease or health condition, and nor should it be continued as such. Always work with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your diet, prescription drug use, lifestyle, or exercise activities. This information is provided as is, and the reader/viewer assumes all risks from the use, non-use, or misuse of this information.